Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode book something, chapter 10, something. We're on stolen elections. Ralph Pizzullo, the Venezuela.
Venezuela and the book that never ends.
Yeah. And never says anything of any substance whatsoever.
We did talk because I made that joke to you yesterday. So we did actually talk. I didn't miss you after all, Brian.
The book that never ends and has a knack for saying the same thing over and over and over. Literally. No.
And any new thing they introduce is not true.
Yeah, it's wild.
Unfortunately, we're probably not going to get to chapter 9 tonight because we still have a long way to go in chapter 8. And chapter 9 is where President Trump enters the chat. And so that'll be fun for next week.
Yeah, yes. But he doesn't actually enter the chat. Like
Eric does.
They should have called it the 2020 election, not President Trump. To me, that was like kind of
the chapter. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not President Trump. I mean,
well, it's Eric.
Okay, right. Well, the chapter we're in is called criminal investigation. It's not a criminal investigation either. So
well, that's true. And we're also on part 3 of said criminal investigation, followed by part 4 up next. Once we get through the Trump chapter. But before we jump into that, let's go ahead and hit our sponsors. Badlanders, you're all familiar with Loaded Gun Coffee. They've been longtime supporters here at Badlands. I drink it every single morning. I absolutely love the redneck roast and the butter pecan. It's fantastic. Their coffee is so good. You've probably met them in person at some of our GART events, but did you know they're also a veteran-ran, family-owned shop in Lake Havasu, Arizona? Every bag of their whole bean coffee delivers a high-octane, patriotic punch of flavor with a long family history of commitment to freedom. Every bag is a testament of pride and honor, from the skilled farmers who cultivate each blend to their roasters that handpick the finest coffee beans from around the world. Loaded Gun Coffee has mastered the unique brewing methods, resulting in the best tasting coffee around. I vouch for that 100%. This coffee is smooth and delicious, the best way to start your mornings. Get on over to badlandsmedia.tv/loaded and use promo code Badlands to get 10% off your order. And if you're in the Lake Havasu area, stop in their newly renovated store and say hello. That is, again, badlandsmedia.tv/loaded, promo code Badlands. And hey, Badlanders, stay loaded with Loaded Gun Coffee. Yeah. Ashe rocking the Loaded Gun hat. There you go.
Love it.
And
hashtag Black Powder.
Let's also hear from Margie, the Moistureless.
In a quiet town where beards grow wild and lips dare to crack without permission, one woman has suffered.
Hi, I'm Margie, and I'm Jatriot's mother.
But the world would come to know her by another name, Madame Margie, the Moistureless.
Jay came home with a lip balm. It's called Soft Disclosure.
With one miraculous application, her power awakened.
Within one day, my lips were healed. It was miraculous.
But salvation came at a cost. For in the shadowed lands known only as Badlands,
you boys at Badlands are so handsome.
She saw potential.
You're covering up your beautiful faces.
And she made her demand.
Shave them all off.
Or face the consequences. Beard oil will not save you now.
And you'll look so much better.
This summer, moisturize wisely and guard your beard. Because Madame Margie, the Moistureless, is always watching.
Oh, man.
I love her so much. Did not have Jay's mom becoming one of our greatest villains on my bingo card, but did you hear, Brian, you were in, I think for at least part of the show on Monday's Office Makes Sandwiches, Christy started agreeing with her and saying that you should shave your beard?
No.
Yeah,
she says it publicly, but she doesn't say it in private. She doesn't. She doesn't. She plays with it and she'll sit there and do all that. My mom's the same way though. My mom thinks I need to shave it, and I'm like, you need to shave your head. See, I can do that too.
I like it. Yeah, so everybody get lip balm and beard oil. Because We have to both listen to Jay's mom and fight against her influence. So softdispleasure.com, promo code Badlands. All right.
So we're on page 136, I believe.
Correct.
All right, let's jump into it. Lord Malik Brown back in the mix here, and saying that he's a liar, basically.
Where are you?
At the very top of 136. It says, based on the evidence so far, it's fair to say there are problems with some of Lord Malik Brown's statements. For example, the company Smartmatic has never been a Venezuelan company. According to engineers who worked for Smartmatic and the CNE, the real owners of Smartmatic are none other than Diosdado Cabello and Jorge Rodriguez, both of whom are Venezuelan and members of the Chavez Maduro regime.
Yeah.
And
Once again, no
for the
source.
people who didn't listen last week, Lord Malik Brown actually said that it was a U.S. company.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which it is.
Which it is. Yeah, but so take their assertion as true. They're both Venezuelan and members of the Chavez Maduro regime. So they're doing, I wrote in the margin, they're doing the China, if you're from that country, you must be working for the party thing, right?
Yes.
Like there are no Venezuelans running businesses that aren't running them for Maduro, right? That's kind of what we're getting at here.
Me and Ghost talked about that today on Daily. We were talking about monolithic interpretations, like when we say like Russians and we automatically assume that it means Putin and the entire Kremlin. Yeah. And that's not true. Yeah.
The other thing that this does, so Jorge Rodriguez is put right in the middle of this, and that comes even more in the next chapter. And his sister, right? It's his sister that's the current acting president of Venezuela.
Yeah, Delcy Rodriguez. Yeah.
So when we talk about, this book seems really rushed. It seems like they had to get it to market without fact checking it or even proofing it, right? That raises it's a notable that the net effect of the book smears the current acting president, and the book came out before she became that, but she was the vice president when the book came out. So.
Well, remember, according to the book, somebody else is the current vice president of Venezuela. That was like earlier in this chapter. It named a whole different person as the current vice president.
Who did it name?
I don't remember. I know I have it highlighted or underlined, and I don't have a whole lot of underlining. So
Just another error in the book.
yeah,
One of many.
But purposeful, like, are they errors or are they intentional, factual, assertions?
Misdirections.
Yeah, are they lying on purpose or they just get it wrong? Right? That's the question. My point is the misstatement, right? The accident, the whoops, ends up setting up it's fudding Delcy Rodriguez.
Yes.
yeah. On page 109, it says another influential player within the cartel is Tarek El Ayasami, Venezuela's Minister of Industries and National Production, and currently the country's vice president. And it was Delcy Rodriguez that was currently the vice president when this was written. He was now the president. Yeah. Maybe that is Tarek El Asami, by the way, totally Venezuelan name. Is he now the vice president? Maybe. I don't know. In the next
acting vice president right now. Do we know?
Look that
I'll
up.
keep going. I'll look it up.
And the next paragraph, it says, this is what one of the engineers who created the software had to say. And even when Smartmatic had to divest itself of Sequoia and they were bought by Dominion, the software to run the elections was still owned by Smartmatic. And there's a lot of communication between the two companies. Here's a section of the cable written by the U.S. Embassy political counselor Robert Downs in 2006. And he says, quote, the perspective we have here after several discussions with Smartmatic is the company is de facto Venezuelan and operated by Venezuelans. Our best guess is there are probably several well-known Venezuelan businessmen backing the company who prefer anonymity, either because of their political affiliations or perhaps because they manage the interests of senior Venezuelan officials.
So in an official State Department cable, our perspective is this. We have no facts to back it up. And our best guess, which means they have no idea.
Yep.
That's the official statement.
So yeah, let's unpack that. The perspective, like you just said, after several discussions, so we're talking hearsay, is that it's de facto Venezuelan and operated by Venezuelans. The latter is true. It's not de facto Venezuela, but it is operated by Venezuelans. Our best guess, expats, Our best guess is there are probably several well-known Venezuelan businessmen backing the company. And again, I want to point this out. Venezuela is not a great place to conduct business right now. So even if the businessmen, were able to manipulate elections the way that they're alleging here, they're doing a shitty job at it.
Yes.
So she, just to tie up that other point, she replaced Tarek in 2018. So this book was written in 2025. So pretty big error.
That's a huge error.
She currently has no vice president, according to the internet.
So he was actually the vice president at the time?
He was when Maduro appointed her to succeed him in 2018.
So let me see if they're saying it, because they say is the country's current vice president. So
Correct.
that can't be. Yeah, he can't be like currently in this timeline that they're writing about there. It doesn't say.
7 years off.
Yeah, he's off by almost a decade. So, all right, what do we got next?
The CFIUS investigation by the Treasury. And their little
I was looking that up. Did you guys already hammer on the our best guess coming up again?
Yes.
Okay. Because the our best, like they love
they
that one.
literally have no clue.
They love to say our best guess based on the intelligence we just made up is
yeah. And they're passing that off as fact that they're
Correct.
guessing, but it's factual. So
Correct.
on the next page, it says a year after the interview with Lord Malik Brown, and earlier this month, the District of Southern Florida indicted the two members of Smartmatic, including one of the founders, Piñate, for bribery and money laundering. Here's an article from the Miami Herald, another CIA infested news outlet. Smartmatic found Roger. Yeah. Smartmatic found Roger Piñate and former vice president of election technology provider have surrendered to authorities in the United States to face charges against them, the Miami Herald reported on Tuesday. According to the report, Piñate and former Smartmatic vice president for hardware development, Jorge Miguel Vasquez, surrendered to face charges in Miami federal court on Monday. The two were among the four indicted by a federal grand jury last week over an alleged bribery and money laundering scheme in relation to the 2016 elections in the Philippines. They were also charged along with Andres Bautista and Eli Moreno. Moreno, I'm only going to say that I know that he's Jewish, but I thought I saw somewhere that there were some interesting connections with Eli Moreno. And then the other point that I want to note that was just bizarre to me is $8.5 million bond for Piñate. That seems a bit excessive.
Is
Way
it true?
excessive.
Do we know if it's true?
No.
Well, just so that people know, the allegation for the Philippines is that they were bribing the officials over there. That's actually the allegation. It had literally nothing to do with the machines. But the way that this is put in this context, following the CFIUS slide that they put in there, which has to do with the controlling interest, and we were just talking about Lord Malik Brown and the ownership, they're implying that this arrest has something to do with the actual software, that type of thing. It literally has nothing to do with that at all.
So his bond amount was set at $8.5 million. He deposited $200,000 was deposited on his behalf as part of the bond, and U.S. magistrate judge in the Southern District of Florida issued it.
Yeah, and the charges for Piñate and Vasquez are one count of conspiracy to violate the U.S. Foreign Corruptions Practice Act, FCPA, and one substantive violation of the FCPA. Bautista, Piñate, Vasquez, and Moreno were all charged with one count of conspiracy to commit commit money laundering, and 3 counts of international laundering of monetary instruments. I don't know what a monetary instrument is. Does anybody know what that is?
It could be bonds or something like that. Some type of
Crypto.
Could be.
It could be crypto. I mean, I think there's disputes about what falls into what asset category, but it could be.
And Pineda and Vasquez face maximum penalties of 5 years for the FCPA charges and 20 years for each count of the laundering charges. So potentially 65 years, it looks like. And okay, so that's all I have on that. But you see that picture right there on 139?
Yeah.
Were you guys able to read that?
No.
Okay, so let me read this.
I did but I had to use like a magnifying glass.
Let me read this to you. This is from the United States, Southern District of Florida, United States versus Bautista. It says, Company 1, headquartered in Venezuela. Oh, nope. Headquartered in the United Kingdom. Sorry, I misread that. Was a holding company that funded subsidiaries, including Company 2 and 3. Company 2 was an election voting machine and service provider company that was privately held under Company 1's parent corporate structure. Company 2 had offices worldwide and was headquartered in Venezuela. Nope, United Kingdom again. Excuse me. I keep misreading that. During the time of the criminal offenses, Company 2 had at least one employee working and residing in the Southern District of Venezuela. No, Florida. That says Florida. I'm sorry. I can't read this right, guys. Company 3, a subsidiary of Company 1 and 2, was located and headquartered in Caracas, Venezuela. Oh no, Boca Raton, Florida. Company, like where the fuck
Brian,
is Venezuela from?
Brian, it's the source code. It's the source. The source code allows them to push buttons in Venezuela and make it appear. I did for both you guys and for the chat put the actual link to that case in the private chat here and in the chat on Rumble.
So Company 1, United Kingdom. Company 2, United Kingdom. Company 3, Florida.
So Lord Malik Brown setting up in America.
Yeah.
I love it.
So
wearing a Venezuelan skin suit.
You know what I kind of wondered? So when you look at the Venezuela case and the people that are indicted in it, the one person that gets off kind of without a scratch is Antonio Mujica. Antonio Mujica gets off with nothing. Like he's not indicted, nothing. And I'm wondering, he is what's that?
I think they flipped him.
Maybe not flipped him, but he might actually be an asset in some form or fashion. But everything is moving away from Smartmatic at this point, right? We're already 3 levels removed from Smartmatic. It's Smartmatic into Sequoia and now in Dominion. Smartmatic's run its course. It doesn't, it's not needed anymore. And so it's like when you have, loose ends, what do? You tie them up. And how do you tie them up? You put them in prison.
Yes. This is the model that the CIA uses, but not their assets.
Right. Because their assets know way too much.
Yes.
Mujica was speaking at the Collision conference in 2021. He was talking technology and democracy.
I don't have anything else on this page.
When were they indicted?
2016, I think, or 20.
Right on. So not only not in trouble, but spokesman for democracy. Apparently,
it was after 2016, but it was for a 2016 election. I think they were indicted in 2018, or actually, they announced the indictments in 2024.
Yeah, it was recent. I mean, more recent than 18.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, that's a great point. It was after the 2020 election because I reported on it. So it was probably 23, 24.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like their questions at the end of 139. Were the bribes paid to fix the election? That's not even the allegation. There's more to come. Let's look at the following Dominion slides again and pay special attention to line 5. You want to read line 5?
Brian, can you read line 5? Because I can't tell what it says.
Are you?
Because
You're
it's
talking
in 3.2 font, everyone.
On the top of 140.
line 5 says by 2010, Dominion acquired 2 American election companies, Diebold and Sequoia Voting Systems, from Smartmatic. Dominion refused to disclose the company's 2 purchasing agreements due to non-disclosure provisions.
Woo.
Yeah.
I mean, that is what they do. That's accurate.
So 2010 was interesting, and this acquisition specifically was interesting. And Eric Holder has a letter still posted to the DOJ, to justice.gov, about this acquisition. And Eric Holder was the one that actually forced ES&S to divest of Diebold. And in that divestiture, they outlined all the things that were necessary for the purchasing company, including the approval of the DOJ. So the DOJ explicitly had to approve of Dominion buying Diebold from ES&S. And there was a whole bunch of things that came with it, like no bid contracts. So they had to give up their contracts, no bid contracts, software, tech support, like all sorts of things that are outlined in this. And so this was, and the whole justification for it was that ES&S had grown too big and they had a monopoly. I think they had like 60 or 70% of the market. Well, those 2 purchases alone gave Dominion more than 50% of the market. Yes. And so, this was something that was approved. And this is where Ashe, that one letter from what's his name, the Legal Women, or the Free Speech for People guy, John Boniface. This is where his letter comes in. That's like, how did they approve this? Dominion had 1 employee, one CEO, 1 employee, and no contracts. So, and that's what he says in the letter. I don't know how true it is, but
in other way, everybody knew.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody knew a long time ago. Gary is like, this is in the next chapter. This is brand new information to me about elections in 2020. And it's like, hang on a second. Everybody knew this back in like 2011. Go ahead, Roxanne.
What I think is most important about what you just said, Brian, is if you look at historically, anytime the DOJ gets involved to the extent that you just outlined, it is to steer whatever they want into wherever they want it. Now, if you look at, ES&S is the software that is used here in Florida, right? And it has not touched and I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying it's not touched this ecosphere that we're talking about here, right? With the contaminated software.
Well,
just follow me on this.
Yes.
Yeah. So at this time when this is happening, if the CIA and the nefarious people are in charge of the manipulation of our elections, it would make perfect sense for the DOJ to want to have to approve and order the divestiture of a large chunk of another software so they can contaminate more elections. And they know who is contaminated and who's not. So by them being able to steer that acquisition and approve it, it just furthers our line of thinking that they are steering more and more of our elections into a swamp as opposed to ensuring that they stay pure.
Yeah, well, it's into the controlled opposition dynamic, right? You have a choice. You have a choice between ES&S and Dominion. And to your point, yes, at this point in the story, ES&S is not contaminated by this source code, by this, this specific. But when you get into chapter 9, you'll see why I went, well,
right. But at this point, they want as much of our elections under their control as possible.
Yeah. With the illusion of choice.
Correct.
Yeah.
So here's the justice letter. Justice Department requires key divestiture in ES&S, Election Systems and Software, Premier Election Solutions Manager. The assets to be divested include the means to produce all versions of Premier's hardware, software, and firmware used to record, tabulate, transmit, or report votes. Under the terms, ES&S must divest of all the intellectual property associated with all versions, past, present, and in development of the Premier voting equipment system to another company. ES&S must also divest of all Premier tooling and fixed assets, as well as inventory of parts and components. In order to allow the divestiture buyer to better serve disabled voters, ES&S must also grant a fully paid up, irrevocable, perpetual license to use the AutoMark, ES&S's ballot marking device, for which Premier had a limited license prior to the acquisition. The buyer of the divestiture assets will have the right to modify and improve both Premier products and the AutoMark. ES&S must sell the divestiture assets to a buyer approved by the department.
But they refuse to disclose their purchase agreements.
And they refuse to show us the source code, but they can order companies to sell it off to another corporation.
Exactly. That's the point I was just going to make.
That's insane. We can't see it, but other companies can be forced by the government to sell it.
Right. So the corrupt stuff you're not allowed to see, and that's fine. That's never questioned by the DOJ. But something that to date has no corruption allegations against it, they're not allowed to have any of their stuff remain under their control, even through divestiture, where they're getting a licensing fee for the use of their intellectual property. They severed every bit of that and said, you have to let it go.
Yep. That's nuts.
It is nuts.
All right. I don't have anything on the next couple pages.
All right. So on page 140.
I had one more thing on this page, just on the assertion where they say, because why did they refuse to disclose the purchase agreements? Because they would have had to show the Venezuelans retain the rights to the software previously owned by Sequoia. Even if that's true, just owning the rights to software does not mean that you have access into that software in its install wherever it is. Just wanted to point that out.
Okay, so in the next paragraph, it says Dominion has acquired Sequoia's inventory and all intellectual property, including software, firmware, and hardware for Sequoia's precinct and central optical scan and DRE voting solutions, including BPS, and they list a bunch of the rest of them. So I found, just to your point, Brian, I find that like it's just crazy that they treat one company one way and another company completely differently by the DOJ. So,
yeah. And this purchase was June 4th in 2010. The letter from the DOJ was March 8th. So I don't think that they had the deal in place in March 8th. So May, June, you had 2 months for Diebold and Dominion to come to terms. While that's all going on, Dominion's acquiring Sequoia and immediately becomes exactly what the DOJ said ES&S was, a monopoly on the elections. They had too much of a share of the elections, and they permitted Dominion to have that share.
Because they control it, not Venezuela.
Exactly, because it's not Venezuelan controlled. It's controlled by the Americans and the CIA.
Yes. All right, so page 141, it says when Dominion acquired Sequoia from Smartmatic, it was really a transfer of software license to Dominion, software built and still owned by Smartmatic, which is controlled by Venezuela.
Yeah. Diosdado Cabello, dun, dun, dun. Jose Rodriguez. Did they say Jose Rodriguez this time?
They do say Jose Rodriguez right here.
Oh, my goodness. What a typo.
Oh,
it's Jorge, guys.
That one,
Jeez.
too. Maybe there's another one. Maybe there's a Jose too. But maybe there is a Jose. Like Carvajal and Carbajal.
He's also friends
with
twin
evil twin, Brian.
I mean, this is just so poorly written. So poorly written.
Yeah, it was rushed. It had to get ahead of the operation. They wanted to get ahead of discombobulation, but they failed.
Yeah. On the next page on 142, I was raising the red flag on Ronald Morales in 2020. Like I found him popping up right away as, you know, a Dominion engineer, as well as having his like lineage go all the way back to the beginning of Smartmatic. But yeah, that's all I got on that.
So I don't know if you guys have anything on 143 at the top, but I definitely have something at the bottom.
No, I don't.
No.
Okay. All right. So the last paragraph, looking at the above chart again, this time shift your attention to line 6. And of course, they're talking about the 2018 State Street Capitol, which they keep leaving state out, so you can't find it, of New York became a major investor in Dominion. Okay, so they're talking about that, and then they actually call it Staple Street.
No, it is Staple Street.
Yeah, Staple Street. Dominion's parent company received a $200 million investment from UBS Securities, which is owned by the Bank of China. So let's talk about that.
That
UBS
should be UBS Securities, but it says USB Securities.
USB.
Exactly.
But it should be.
It should be UBS. Yes.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Like
Another
more
typo.
typos. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about that. UBS Group AG is a Swiss multinational headquartered in Zurich. It owns UBS Securities. UBS holds 51% controlling stake during this entire time frame, up to 2026. The rest is held by institutional investors in China called China Securities Regulatory Commission. So they do not own the majority at the time of UBS at all. Okay. They have a minority interest in UBS, which is securities, which is owned by UBS Group AG. So that's very, very important. But also know this whole arrangement changed when UBS quit Credit Suisse merger in 2023. They no longer had Chinese interest in it once those two merged. So at the time of this printing of this book, this is literally not true at all. Just FYI. It wasn't true then.
But wait. Did you check USB Securities?
I did not.
So there was, because I remember looking into this at the time, and there was a big controversy about the difference between UBS Securities Limited and there was another one, UBS Securities Holdings, I think. And one of them tied back to China, and I think specifically to HSBC, Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation, or whatever it's called.
That is true. This is the one I'm talking about. It's actually called UBS Securities Company Limited. Limited,
right. And then there was a holdings, and there was another one. So UBS is kind of, it's one of those entities that is like just so many layers.
Well, it's a money laundering operation, and they basically got their self out over their skis, and because of all the money laundering and the corruption that they were doing, and there was a whistleblower and all kinds of things came out. So they basically went, belly up, and that's when they had to merge with Credit Suisse.
So Josh Phillips at Epoch Times did a great dig on this and put together like a kind of a documentary on this specific claim right here. So I mean, I don't remember all of it. Again, this was something I was very heavily researched on back in 2020, 2021. And then when all that kind of went by the wayside, we got into more of the nitty gritty election fraud, like the actual election fraud, not Venezuela, that kind of thing.
Right.
The one thing I'll say about Staple Street is, and this is something that's very difficult to find on the internet, but I think we mentioned it before, but William Kennard was on the board of Staple Street at the time. And William Kennard is a former, I think he was like the FCC chair under Obama. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it was FCC. And he also was on the board of AT&T. And following the 2020 election, he got promoted to the chairman of the board of AT&T. And so that was always just kind of one of those weird things. I think he was also affiliated with Carlyle Group as well. He might have been on the board of Carlyle Group, but William Kennard was always a very interesting person in this whole storyline.
Yeah. But the bottom line is the CCP never had controlling interest.
Right.
Are you guys ready for the next assertion? Well, it's a good one. In October 2020, 3 weeks before the 2020 election in the United States, China or the CCP through UBS Securities invested $400 million more into Staple Street Capital for a total of $600 million. The CCP gained financial control of Dominion. The whistleblowers discovered this information in documents filed with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission.
The whistleblowers discovered that. That's public information, guys.
Published everywhere. Yeah.
It was literally going viral.
So go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm going to move on to the next page. So
okay. So
go ahead, Ashe.
Well, I was just going to say, where'd the money go? Invested how? How did they execute their control through Venezuelans with secret buttons? Is that what the money went to?
It was actually a stock options purchase.
So I have some details on that.
Oh.
UBS Securities' $600 million investment in the Staple Street Capital does not alter Dominion Voting Systems ownership structure. It has zero direct implications for Dominion's title control or board composition. The investment details: on July 2020, UBS Security Company Limited, UBS 51% owned, committed the $600 million as a limited partner to Staple Street Capital Partner 4 LP. The structure was a blind pool PE fund that, like UBS, provides capital. They were a general partner, and it deploys it across 10 to 15 portfolio companies like consumer goods, tech services. Dominion was not a fund for investment. It was acquired pre-2020 via one of their subsidiaries, an early vehicle management buyout. The subordinate funding entity held controlling stake in Dominion post 2018 until 2025, when it was sold to Liberty Vote. So it literally had nothing to do. It wasn't even in the same funding stream downstream. Yep. So not only did it not affect the management structure, it literally wasn't even in the same fund.
Yeah, and my question about this is first of all, it's all conjecture. But what are they trying to make us believe that China control China control, right? But how so again, how is China so magic Venezuelans with magic buttons? My point is, even if they did pour $400 million into this technology to run the US elections, that on the ground happens with Americans. It happens through American systems. It happens through American process. It happens through American offices. It happens with Americans signing the poll tapes and all of the things every step of the way.
Yep.
But we don't see Americans in this at all.
None. But you have in front of the Americans standing on our shoulders a Venezuelan with a Chinese guy standing on his shoulders.
Like a couple of like sitting on the shoulder, and then like a Venezuelan hat.
So the Chinese guy is pulling the strings of Venezuela, who's pulling the strings of the expats.
It's Russian nesting dolls, Venezuela, China style.
So it's Russia, is what you're saying. We're gonna end up in Russia.
Somehow Russia will get brought into this. So on page 145, it says the answer to that question. Well, the question is, and through all these sales, name changes, and transaction, who owns the source code of the software used in Smartmatic, Sequoia, and Dominion voting machines? The answer to that question is contained in a report from one of the two groups that monitored the 2004 recall referendum vote in Venezuela, the European Union. So hold on. You're telling me that the CIA's 23-year veteran, along with the DEA, the most qualified researcher ever, all these whistleblowers and everybody else, they couldn't figure out anything about the source code and everything else, but the European Union, by monitoring an election, was able to figure this out. Let's read on. On page 22 of their 51-page report, it clearly states the VM software was developed by Smartmatic in conjunction with the CNE. Further down the page, the report says the EU says that, quote, the CNE, however, owns the source code of all the Smartmatic software that they use. According to the computer engineers and programmers who worked with Smartmatic from the beginning and were recruited by the whistleblowers, that is still true today. In 2004, Colonel, was the UK a member of the European Union?
No.
In 2004.
Oh, yeah. When did they have Brexit?
2018.
Yeah.
So this is literally the UK who is going to end up with full control of the software and who's integrating Sequoia or moving to integrate it into Smartmatic. They're the ones that are saying, yep, it's totally the Venezuelans. You guys need to buy Sequoia and put De La Rue's software in there. Obnoxious.
And keep in mind, they were observers on the ground. They had no access to anything that happened systematically. They're like the Carter voter integrity guys. And by the way, the Carter integrity guys said the 2004 election in Venezuela went off without a hitch. But the guy standing right beside them, co-teaming the observation of the election in the field, somehow figured all of this out with no access to the information.
Anytime you see any of these, Western democracies sending observers to monitor an election, shenanigans are afoot.
100%.
Like,
because they do the exit polling so that they can say, oh, that was a cheat. Because look, we talked to all these people when they were leaving, whether they did or not. And because we know our exit polling sucks too, right? It's all manipulated. And by the way, we're supposed to believe that the EU, home of NATO, home of the CIA,
Ursula's castle.
Yes. Those people are objective
Yes.
on all of this. The ones who have been involved in election interference in Georgia, Slovakia, Hungary, those people are the independent observers.
Yeah, we were talking in the Badlands back channels today. All of those people's buildings right now are lit up with the colors of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Who hasn't held election since when?
Yeah.
2022.
Democracy.
Yes. Yes, exactly. That would have been another copy spill. On my book.
One of the things that, I reached out to Colonel Towner about earlier was the HPSCI, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence for the United States, sending delegates to congressmen went to Honduras to monitor their most recent elections. Let me say that again, not the Committee on Elections, but the House Permanent Select Committee, Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, the HPSCI, sent monitors to go monitor Honduras. And what were the other countries that they sent monitors to? I'm trying to remember, but they were all countries right there within Venezuela's kind of little
Sphere.
area of operations, right in their sphere. And I think one of them was like Barbados. I think one of them, I can't find it off the the top here, but I wrote an article about it for Gateway, naming the other countries that they sent them to, but countries that it would behoove them to have friendly people in position. Yeah.
And the interesting part of that, just for the audience who may not know, if you look back over time, most of the people, not all of them, but most of the people that make it to the intelligence committees have ties to the CIA, either overtly or covertly.
That would make sense.
As a matter of fact, that's where you find Peter Goss and the guy that was, mysteriously the author of the Patriot Act and shepherding it through, that ends up being the CIA director eventually. He sat on that committee. They have very close ties to those people.
Was it the UK or was it the UN that sent monitors to monitor our election? I know the UK sent people to actually campaign in Virginia and some other states for the 2024 election. Yeah, literally the UK sent people over to campaign in the 2024 election against Donald Trump.
Yes.
Which is absolutely bonkers, like that they did that and nobody raised a stink about it. But yeah. I don't have anything left on this page other than the EU saying that I refer you back to the official report the EU reprinted about it and its conclusions that the quote, the CNE, however, owns the source code of all Smartmatic software that they use.
Conjecture.
Yeah, right. And how do we know this? Because Venezuela regime bought 28% of Bizta back in 2003 to maintain their ownership. Now, what's also interesting, go ahead.
But that was actually not a purchase. That was a loan that was paid back, just to clear the record.
And then in the very next paragraph, it says, this is not something made up by conspiracy theorists. The EU report was signed off on by the Venezuelan Senate and Smartmatic. Now, I'm pretty sure that 2003 was right around the time when there was that coup in Venezuela, and the Senate was favorable to the coup, actors.
Well, actually, I was surprised by this myself. Their version of our Congress was controlled. Their speaker, so to speak, was the opposition party.
Yes.
And that just lends itself to the fact that they have actual elections. Because you want me to believe that Chavez and Maduro was a dictator and yet the Congress was headed by the opposition party? How did that happen? That doesn't happen in dictatorships.
So you're telling me that not only could they not control, they have control of the elections through Smartmatic, not only could they not implant favorable leaders in global regimes and countries, they couldn't even do it in their own Congress?
They could not control the down ballots in Venezuela.
Man, this is the best election hacking software ever.
Super.
And it was not the Maduro, obviously, or Chavez, whatever, administration that signed off on this report. It was the opposition leaders.
Wow.
Just to make sure that's clear.
So I think we should read the last paragraph and then describe this picture for the audience because of what they're asserting. It's the same principle used in any Apple computer. You buy the computer, but Apple still owns and controls the source code of the software running your computer. It explains how Apple can update the software on your devices anytime they want, even when you're asleep. Source code is the master blueprint revealing and determining how your computer will behave. And then we have this picture, and it is hands holding a cell phone, and that cell phone has little connection lines running to machines all over the world under the banners of these three different software companies. But the guy running it is down here in Venezuela. It's okay. We want Trump to win. And we want, in Colorado, they need to have taxpayer funded abortion up to and including the moment of birth. So we'll add that in. We're going to have, fuck it. Let's do JD Vance. Why not? That's what we're being led to believe. Venezuelans, not Americans. Not Americans stealing anything. It's not the CIA. CIA are the good guys. CIA is the one telling you about this right now after they've been stealing elections for 20 years.
75.
The one thing I will say,
code, Roxanne, the source code.
The one thing I will say, and I think, it's one of an umbrella point that they're making in this book is that we should not have election software that is, black box source code that nobody can look at and nobody can inspect, because it is incredibly vulnerable, and because we should never be voting on something that can be manipulated so easily that we don't have any way of knowing. Like, it should be open source. Like, it's a simple counting machine, essentially, and there's no possible way in hell. So that is one thing I will agree with them on in this book. All right. Chapter 9, President Trump.
Should we do our last sponsor?
Yes, we should.
Feels appropriate given the conversation.
Hey there, Earthlings. I'm here on the streets of New York to tell you about something that's literally out of this world. Traveling between dimensions really takes it out of you, but I've found the perfect solution. My Shroom Vibe can now be your Shroom Vibe. Elevate your frequency. Get microdose capsules, gummies, and chocolate bars at myshroomvibe.com. Use code BADLANDS for 10% off your order. Trust me, galaxy hopping demands balance, and ours comes from Mother Nature. Organic, not synthetic. It's the real deal. Cy Lee, if you know what I mean. Check it out. Your frequency will thank you. Visit myshroomvibe.com. Organic goodness, not synthetic. Use code BADLANDS.
myshroomvibe.com. Use promo code BADLANDS if you want this book to make sense. All right. Chapter 9.
All right. Chapter 9.
President Trump is the name of chapter 9. And it says, quote, anyone who thinks my story is anywhere near over, sadly mistaken. President Donald Trump, November 2020.
Here. This is pretty much the story of Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, the Kraken, and all of that, but from a behind the scenes, allegedly behind the scenes, the people who influenced those claims and everything else,
Or that set her up.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, I mean, for sure.
So we start with a anonymous benevolent billionaire. Right?
Yep.
Right? Who Chavez started confiscating his family's businesses. So disgruntled customer. And tells you right away that he was one of those oligarchs that was in bed with the CIA, because those are the people that Chavez targeted because of what they had corruptly stolen from people.
Yeah. And so Martin and Gary are doing their Cartel del Sol investigation, and they just happen to stumble upon earth-shattering, world-dominating election fraud machines controlled by the country that is sanctioned to all hell by every modern democracy across the globe. Yeah.
I think we should read this part, because this does, so it may or may not make sense from a history standpoint, but it doesn't make sense from a human standpoint. And from this story. So
I agree.
Bottom of 149, Martin. Well, I'll start actually a sentence before that. A year before the 2020 election, this benevolent, anonymous Venezuelan billionaire, he described to Martin how, at the request of Hugo Chavez in 2003, he had put $5 million into a company called Smartmatic. Martin confessed, I thought it was a smart market. It was a technology company at first. But this billionaire said to me, no, it's a company that runs elections. Martin didn't know what to do with the information at first. As stated before, he and Gary were focused on the cases they were developing against members of the Cartel del Sol, people who had violated the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act by laundering drug money and committing other financial crimes. Just people. Don't name any of them, just people.
So can I just say right there, this is a disgruntled guy that supposedly Chavez sent to jail.
Right.
And then he's saying that Chavez directed him to put money in Smartmatic. Right?
Years before, though, because this is 2019. Yeah, disgruntled, because Chavez had him put money into Smartmatic in 2003, allegedly, according to the book. But he's disgruntled in 2019.
But understand the sequence here. So Chavez gets elected in 1998.
Mm-hmm.
And confiscates this guy's property and throws him in jail. Then in 2003, 5 years later, he's telling, Chavez is telling him he has to invest $5 million in Smartmatic. Right?
Mhm.
Well, so he had once been very close to Hugo Chavez. So I don't know that we see that he was confiscating his businesses when he came to power, do we? It says
when Chavez started confiscating his family businesses. That was done at the beginning of the Chavez.
There wasn't a time when it could have happened later on, like he'd pissed them off or something.
Well,
most of the redistribution of land happened at the beginning of Chavez's first administration.
But for argument's sake, in the book, they're saying that they were close at that point. That Chavez and the secret billionaire were close at that point. And in 2003, he's helping him build software. He's investing in software.
Well, see, I don't interpret that at all. I think it's saying that he was close to Chavez potentially before he was elected. And then when Chavez gets elected, because that's in 1998, that Chavez starts confiscating his. Let's just say there's some.
It's not clear. It's
at
not
all.
clear. The whole book is not clear on the timeline. But you're right. I read that different. I thought it was like they were bros until they weren't, but we don't know when they weren't. But in 2003, they were. That was how I read it.
I think I have the best reading.
Okay.
Mentioned earlier was a Venezuelan billionaire Martin New had once been very close to Hugo Chavez.
I just read that.
How did Martin know him? Did Chavez find out that he was working with the CIA or the DEA, and that's why they had a falling out, and that's why Chavez confiscated his businesses, and that's why Chavez put him in jail, because he was actually a fucking traitor that was working with intelligence from a foreign country?
See, that's what I'm getting at. They find him while they're investigating supposedly Cartel de la Sol.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yes.
But we still don't know when.
No, we don't know when.
Yeah,
That's
that's my point, that I think it's very interesting that, and very telling to me, that they stumble across this guy because we know that the Cartel de la Soles was part of the CIA apparatus in Venezuela. And so they're looking into that and they stumble across this guy.
Yeah. And Brian, I think you're right. We just don't know when. When is it that Chavez discovered this guy was working with the CIA and then went and confiscated the businesses, and then he ran into the arms of the CIA because that was where he, his heart was all along. We don't know what year that is. And Colonel Towner had seen it as 1998, or in the wake of the 98 election. I took it to mean sometime after 2003, because they were still bros in 2003. But the reality is we don't know.
And the reality is this could be a completely fabricated story.
Mm-hmm. Whole thing could be fake. Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So then they're going on their car ride to the two whistleblowers.
Wait. Where are you? Where did you go to?
Well, they lay out the timeline several weeks after. This is
the part I want to read, because this is the part, like this doesn't make sense to me. Several weeks after the November 2020 election, Martin and Gary were driving together to a meeting in D.C. when they started discussing what they had both perceived as irregularities in the 2020 presidential election. What? Several weeks after the 2020 election, they're like, hey, man, that was a little weird, right? They knew that there's this election company that, rigs elections, right? They know about that at this point. At least we were led to believe that. Martin told Gary that the election company, Smartmatic, had been mentioned in some press reports in regard to carrying out possible fraud. Smartmatic? Gary asked. Isn't that the same company your Venezuelan billionaire friend had been told by Chavez to invest money in? That's right, Martin answered. It was during this car ride that the two whistleblowers decided to look into Venezuelan connection to Smartmatic and possible election irregularities. What?
That is so fucking bad.
I'm telling you, man, the writer's strike killed off the best writers of this whole thing, and we are left with scraps ever since.
Well, Martin called the Venezuelan to confirm this.
Get him on the phone.
Because he has his number in his Rolodex.
Yes. Hey, isn't that the same? Hey, we just thought of something, man. There are some people that think that the elections were rigged, and this is weeks after the 2020 election. There's some people that are talking about election fraud, and the Smartmatic came up. Isn't that company that you said that I should invest, that you said Chavez said you should invest in back into that company?
Yeah, this is the best part. Additionally, the billionaire offered to put Martin and Gary in touch with a Venezuelan computer engineer who was then living in the United States. Another one in the United States. Is there anybody that's in Venezuela in this election fraud Venezuelan theory?
Are any of the Venezuelan engineers that developed the Venezuelan software that Venezuela is controlling for 72 countries around the world, are any of them in Venezuela, or are they all in the United States of America?
Apparently they're all here. Martin and Gary contacted the individual who I'll call Source One and flew to meet him in the Midwest. Source One acknowledged he was a computer engineer trained at Simon Bolivar University in Caracas. Back in 2003, he had been directed by Rodriguez. They got it right this time. Jorge, not Jose. Of the CNE to meet with three young computer engineers, Peñate, Mujica, and Anzola. The first meeting took place in a building on the presidential ramp of Hugo Chavez, Ramp 4 of the Caracas International Airport. And that is how it all began.
So all of the American Venezuelan expats flew back to Venezuela to have a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Who believes that shit?
In 2003, Jorge, Roger, into when did they flee? When did they go to the when did they set up in Palm Beach? These three guys?
Like 2004, I think.
No, we know they were definitely here in 2004, but it had to do the original date dates back to 2001.
That's what I thought too.
Because remember, they were here when the hanging Chad thing happened, and that's when they started.
That was 2000.
Yeah,
that was just coincidence.
Can we go back? Can we go down to my next favorite paragraph?
Yeah.
This professor knew and had worked with Smartmatic's three founding engineers, Peñate, Mujica, and Anzola. He had assisted them in designing the basic design of the election software, and he had in his possession a hard drive from an engineer named Reyes Zumeta, who is now living in the U.S. Another one.
This is where we end up at ESNS too, by the way.
Everybody is in the United States. Zumeta had helped write the source code and had worked on early parts of software with three founding engineers. Zumeta would immediately be disqualified as any type of witness because he was addicted to drugs and hookers.
No, he was addicted to addition, Brian. He liked math. What is wrong with you? How dare you pervert his addition and prostitutes? It says addition in the book instead of addiction, but Brian is correct. It says over the years, Zumeta had developed an addition to drugs and prostitutes, which led to money problems. The professor sent him lots of cash. In turn, Zumeta gave him the hard drive as a form of collateral. So the professor, a super duper good guy, professor that was helping our whistleboys, our heroes of this story, he was keeping Zumeta in math and whores. And that's how they got the hard drive.
I figured it out. You know who source one is? John Paul Mac Isaac. It's John Paul Mac Isaac, the Hunter Biden laptop blind guy. This is so fucking comical, man. Like, who? Zumeda had never returned to collect it and pay his debt. John Paul Mac Isaac. He later got involved with the owners of the Omaha, Nebraska-based election company, Election ES&S, running elections in the United States. Ashe, take it away.
In 2014,
No. Come on, you're gonna let that one go?
What?
He's addicted to drugs and prostitutes, and he gets a phone call from ES&S.
I didn't even
Eric
put that
Coomer.
together. Oh my gosh. He's Eric Coomer. So for the uninitiated, Eric Coomer was a heroin addict who was on the floor in the fetal position in prison, withdrawing from heroin. The reason he was in prison was driving under the influence of heroin. And a couple weeks later, he gets a cold call from Smartmatic.
No,
right?
ES&S.
What? That was Sequoia or Smartmatic?
Maybe it was Sequoia, but
It was
I thought
Sequoia.
it was
Yeah.
ES&S.
No, it's look it up,
You're
but I'm
right.
pretty sure it was Sequoia or Smartmatic. Gets a cold call. Hey, we really need you to come do security on our elections. Could you hurry up and withdraw from heroin faster? Because we really need, which has got to be you.
It was Sequoia.
Yeah.
So then that's a pattern, right? If it's not just one
Totally
company,
missed that, by the way, thank you for bringing that to my
I wrote-
attention. So the people
in
who
the-
are
in the
compromised
corner.
with drugs and whores are the people recruited to run elections in Dominion Sequoia and ES&S,
and eventually work for Dominion.
and eventually work for Dominion.
This is just
That's so comforting.
right. That's now two
And don't you
election
dare
companies,
question them.
two separate election companies that hire drug addicts, and Coomer's not like a prostitute addict, although he has very
We don't know
bizarre.
that.
Well, he
He has
acknowledges,
weird sex stuff though.
like he made his wife like get down on her knees and like bark like a dog and
To
put
each
a
his
leash
own,
on her.
but decided
do
to
what you
write
want to
about it
do.
on the internet. So
Right.
he's like there's weird stuff going on there, but there is something to be said for that, because these people are not coming up through these companies, through these industries. Neither one of these guys, it sounds like, came up through these industries, and they just happen to be degenerates. Right.
So what
And
you're
but they
saying
have the super secret knowledge. They have the really important knowledge. And so we need them, even though they're degenerates. These were degenerates that were recruited to be in these positions.
Right.
Which means they're blackmailable.
Yeah.
Or they have no credibility if push comes to shove.
Good scapegoat.
Right.
Yeah.
You have two different things. You can either blackmail them and keep them working with incentives,
And they're incentivized. They're heavily incentivized not to be the scapegoat. Right. Like,
yeah, and they don't want to go back to
Allegedly.
their old lifestyle or whatever the case might be. I mean,
in our opinions, based on the information available about the fucking degenerates.
this is crazy, man. See, and that's something that somebody that's not as well, read up on the election stuff as you or I, Ashe, wouldn't pick up on when they're reading this. They're like, oh, this poor guy, he was addicted to drugs and prostitutes, and ES&S cold calls him.
Saved by democracy.
Saved
He
by
was
ES&S.
saved by democracy, saving lives all over the world, especially in Venezuela.
And then Eric Coomer, who was, what was he, like a nuclear physicist, engineer?
Guy.
Yeah, very brilliant guy, allegedly. And he finds his challenge in writing election software, adding ballots, 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1
He's
equals
not super
5.
good at lying to the police. That was pretty obvious, but
That video is crazy.
it's one of my favorite.
That is the craziest video.
I just came to work and immediately did a couple shots. So there's alcohol in my breath, but I totally wasn't driving drunk when I crashed my truck into that building.
Yeah. And Lindell was forbidden from bringing that up in his defamation lawsuit.
Bat Chance nails it. Saved by democracy.
All right, let's keep going.
Oh, this is about to get really good. Okay, well, I'm down at weeks after the 2020. Are we good to go there?
Yep.
Weeks after the 2020 election, they made contact with someone at the National Security Council and had someone hand carry Zumeda's hard drive and give it to the Deputy National Security Advisor, Matthew Pottinger, a former Marine and journalist who served on the NSC from September 22nd to 2019 to January 7th, 2021. Said Gary, I think he just threw it in a safe and didn't bother to do anything with it. He never got back to us. So Pottinger is currently the chairman of the China program for the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies.
Which
So he's a
basically is
spook.
the CIA front.
So he's a spook. Yeah. Wow.
Then we go to Judge Janine.
Yeah.
Of course we do.
Yeah. Next, Gary contacted former judge, New York State prosecutor, and Fox News television host Janine Pirro, who had interviewed him several times in the past. Pirro advised that Gary he contact President Trump's son, Eric Trump. That's another great. This
I
chapter
underlined that just for that.
Yeah, this chapter was the worst by far in terms of like.
There's a lot throughout the book. There is no chapter without error.
No.
None.
There is no to this point up to we're at chapter 9. There is no chapter without error.
So Gary reaches out to Eric
for a book that is allegedly, it has to be seen by the government and approved.
Well, this guy's like wasn't Prezullo oh yeah, New York Times best-selling author.
Didn't he win a Pulitzer or something too?
That's what I was thinking he did.
Yeah, I thought he did.
Paperweights, man. They're paperweights.
Sure. Yeah.
So Gary gets a hold of Eric Trump. They give him his phone number. He calls him. Eric invites him to Trump Hotel in D.C. He went with Martine, but Martine was not allowed in because he's not a U.S. citizen. And Eric Trump didn't want to meet and have to explain the, foreign corruption, foreign nationals type thing. Martin left and Gary went up to the second level where he sat down with Eric Trump and Laura Trump. He says, quote, I said to them, look, we believe the election was stolen based on information that we've gathered during whistleblowing work we're doing against the government of Venezuela and this giant cartel. They listened and were very polite. At the end, they thanked me and Martin for our efforts. Then they put me in touch with lawyer Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani, who were looking into rumors of election fraud for the Trump campaign. They also indicated they were not optimistic about the work that they were doing.
No Pulitzer.
No Pulitzer.
Mm-mm.
Just
he's got a shit ton of awards.
Okay,
but I don't see a Pulitzer.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else until the bottom of the next page, 154.
Yeah, just to go through the sequence of events. So they go to Pottinger. He says he doesn't do anything. They go to Pirro. Pirro says talk to Eric. Eric. Then they talk to Eric. Eric's like, thanks very much. You should talk to Sidney Powell. And then they get connected with Sidney Powell, who tells them they indicated they were not optimistic. So apparently they just abandoned Sidney Powell and then go direct to the Trump campaign, right? Nobody from the city. Like there was a line there, and then they don't like where they're at with Sidney and Rudy, and so then they reach out
to the deputy chief campaign manager.
And is that John Pence?
I don't know.
Did you guys look that up?
I didn't.
Okay, let's see if I still have it.
It's my favorite paragraph in this page. The briefing took about an hour, quote, but it was early in our investigation, recalled Gary, and we didn't know a lot about the Venezuelan election software or how Jorge Rodriguez and Diosdado Cabello were involved. Newsflash, you still don't.
Correct.
It was early in the investigation. We didn't know, and we still don't.
And we still don't.
Yeah.
So
then at the bottom, while you look that up, Ashe, the deputy director made a call to Giuliani, who had a room at the office in the Mandarin Hotel. Quote, we drove there directly and we were taken to a suite on the third floor. 2 young women opened the door. They said they were managing the office for Giuliani. We saw empty liquor bottles laying around. It wasn't a great first impression, end quote. In an inner office, the whistleboys met with Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell and briefed them on what they knew. They explained the government of Venezuela had been fixing elections in their country through a company called Smartmatic, and they gave them a general sense of how Smartmatic was affiliated with another election company called Dominion and how they'd been stealing elections around the world. At that point, the whistleblower didn't know about the Venezuelan relationship with China. All of this was public information at the time. All of this was in the public by this time.
But they're going back to their China allegation based on this thing that doesn't exist.
but the progression from Smartmatic to Sequoia to Dominion was figured out by now. There's nothing like, there's no breaking news in this. Like, it's not some super secret. Now, whatever's on the edition mathematic hooker prostitute guy, drug addict, a drug addition, that's a different story.
But they're saying
It's not multiplication.
in their briefing to these guys that they're connecting Venezuela and China when we've unequivocally proven there is no connection to the Venezuelan government or China. That's my point.
Right. Just the allegations.
Right. They don't have any proof. They're just going in there and telling these people that they've discovered these connections, which we could debunk in like 5 minutes. Right.
Yep.
I would have loved to have been a fly on that room or wall when they're telling them this, where you have to assume Sidney Powell's smart enough to go, what? But
well, yeah, I mean, Sidney Powell is the reason in my mind and recollection is the reason that we know that there is Venezuelan involvement in elections, because she came out with that information in 2020. And but again, in evaluating that, which we all have done over the past several years, in evaluating that, you find this paper trail. You see that these companies are these, morphing and kind of merger and acquisition kind of thing happening. That you see that Democrats had a real big problem with this when it was, originally discovered in the CFIUS report and all of that. And then you see it kind of got handled at some point because they're just totally fine with it, even though none of these problems have been solved. The divestiture didn't stop it. But then you see, we see in the 2016 election, Democrat allegations against election fraud. Venezuela comes up a little bit again. We see Voting Rights Institute guy talk about Venezuelan involvement in election fraud. But when it comes to the Trump allegations in 2020, everybody just shuts the fuck up, and nobody on either side wants to give any oxygen at all to election fraud coming from Venezuela having any role whatsoever in elections, which that foots, man, that when we think about uniparty controlled opposition dynamic and get into one of the camps and fight each other, right? Just get into one of the camps and fight each other. The reality is, yes, there's Venezuelan involvement in our election system. Also, it was the CIA that did it. It's the CIA that has done all of this, wearing, like I said earlier, a Venezuelan skin suit to make everybody to be able to say, no, see, it's Nicolas Maduro. He's got his finger on the button. He's the reason you have taxpayer-funded abortion in Colorado.
So to that point, first off, that's the winner's dilemma. They know that they're a product of the stolen system, and so they don't want to do anything to fix the system that is feeding them, basically.
Is the most benevolent reading of what's going on, but yes,
among other things,
the most benevolent reading.
I know. So a paragraph skipped down when it says, a day later, Gary flew to Nebraska with a friend, Assistant Secretary of Energy Bart Marcoy, to meet with someone from ES&S who said he was willing to talk about the information they had found on Reyes Zumeta's hard drive. That's the drug addiction addict. But when they sat down with him, he said he was afraid and unwilling to talk. The whistleblowers went back to their original source, Source 1, the man who had told them about the professor. And Source 1 gave them the name of another man, Source 2, who had worked for CNE and was living in the U.S. So we've got another source. That's 3 fucking sources in one chapter, all living in the United States. Is there anybody left in Venezuela in this book?
It's so convenient. You don't need any you don't even need a passport to investigate Venezuelan election fraud.
That they have to fly to Venezuela to meet on the presidential ramp.
Yeah.
But all the people, it's like all the people that are involved in stealing the election on behalf of Venezuela are now living in the United States. I wonder why. Maybe they found out that they were doing this in Venezuela and they kicked them the fuck out. And they said, get out of here. Maybe. Just food for thought.
Yeah. And then you have to go back and say, okay, well, if they're all here, why do they fly back to Venezuela to meet on the presidential ramp?
Yeah.
other than tying Venezuela to their fake story.
We have zero evidence that meeting happened, by the way.
Correct. On the presidential ramp.
On the presidential ramp or anywhere else. We have zero evidence that meeting happened.
All right. So source 1 gave them the name of another man, source 2, who had worked for the CNE and was living in the United States. That man's brother had also worked at the CNE and had threatened to expose the number 2 man in CNE, Jorge Rodriguez's deputy, Carlos Quintero. Quintero was a military intelligence officer who had been trained in computer engineering. He worked in CNE as someone who is not only technically smart, but also an enforcer. When Source 2's brother threatened to expose Quintero, Quintero had his people kidnap him and torture him to death. As a warning, they videotaped the torture sessions and sent them to Source 2's family. So I'm sure Source 2 can provide these tapes, right? Because the family has them, so they can provide these. So I hope we get to see that at some point. This compelled Source 2 to flee with his family to the Estados Unidos. Quote, as we recruited more sources, Gary said.
Little Venezuela is what it's called at this point.
Well, was this before or after the TDS that, or the TPS that we gave them, temporary protected status for Venezuelans?
2021. It was enhanced. I think they already had it before 2021, but it was enhanced. It was enhanced by the Harris Biden campaign in 2021. Oh, okay. February 2021 is one of the first things they did.
So as we recruited more sources, Gary said, all of them expressed great fear of Jorge Rodriguez, but even more fear of Carlos Quintero. Where in the world do you have former intelligence officers running election commissions? The United States.
Literally everywhere in the world. Yeah.
Everywhere.
All of the places.
They're not even former intelligence.
All of the places where elections are is the answer to that question.
So then we get into Powell and Giuliani, where they start talking about Smartmatic and the Venezuelans, saying when Powell spoke, she alleged an international plot to rig the 2020 election was engineered by Cuba, China, and Venezuela. She claimed Dominion voting machines can set and run an algorithm that probably ran all over the country to take a certain percentage. Later, she appeared on multiple broadcasts, including Bartiramo's program on Fox News. On Lou Dobbs Tonight, she made the famous "Release the Kraken" statement. And said that she said election fraud was, quote, organized and conducted with the help of Silicon Valley people, big tech companies, the social media, and even the media companies. Now that ties me back, Ashe, to the guys. What was his name that we played the clip of? Why can't I remember the damn name? The old guy from 1992. Remember when he said it's the media that steals elections?
Oh, yeah. The two brothers. Right? You're talking about the yeah. Oh, I can't think of his name either.
Well, shit. I can't think of it off the top of my head now for some reason. God, I'm getting old.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't these two guys the reason Sidney Powell knows about Venezuelan elections? So ostensibly what she said was given to her by them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So the next thing
I posted it, Brian.
So
who posted that? That you remember it was you shared the video. Mark Cook. I'll find it and find his name. It's gonna drive me nuts.
So basically, what they're confessing to is they took fake information to Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani for them to make public, which sabotaged the actual real 2020 election interference.
James Collier.
Thank you.
Yes, you're exactly. So, I'm trying to think if there's a part that mentions this. No.
And then while y'all are looking that up, I do want to say, after she goes on all of these shows and release the Kraken and all that stuff, it says she followed up by releasing 200 pages of documents she claimed supported her allegation. Some of these claims have already been rejected, according to the BBC News. Some of these claims have already been rejected in court cases, while others, such as accusation voting machines, are part of a plot originating under former Venezuelan leader Hugo Chavez, are not backed up by any credible evidence, as this entire book is illustrated. So maybe the BBC got that part right.
But Colonel, quote, to any experienced investigator, evidence and witnesses are much more important than intelligence. That's their literal thing. They said they knew there was a big difference.
Read before, yeah. Read the from the top.
Each time Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani spoke to the press, the whistleboys cringed. They knew there was a big difference between intelligence and collecting evidence. To any experienced investigator, evidence and witnesses are much more important than intelligence. And all they're giving us is alleged intelligence.
I think we should stop for the day.
Yeah, we probably should. That sucks because the next part's really good.
I mean, we can keep going if you want to.
No, that's fine. We can stop here. We'll start fresh with the next part. It's going to be a long night.
It's going to be a long night. It's so do.
So we're supposed to believe that they were cringing as Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani are actually promoting their theories.
Where'd they get the 200 pages of documents? Where did
these stupid
exactly like this is the scapegoating thing, right?
Yeah.
Like you got this. Oh, it's just they didn't do it. They went out there every time. I can't believe they're talking to the press and releasing all those documents that we just gave them and told them to release. How dare they?
Yeah, that's basically what they just said.
Yeah, because Sidney Powell, there was a point in time when she started talking about Venezuelans in the wake of 2020. Yeah. They basically just said they're the reason for that. Yeah. They were the ones that gave her that information. They were the ones that gave her the idea of Venezuelan election fraud to begin with. And then she went out with it. She said the things. She was completely discredited. Like nobody listened to Sidney Powell anymore after that. Tucker Carlson was the reason I stopped listening to Tucker Carlson at all. And I didn't watch Fox News anymore at that point, but I watched Tucker Carlson, right? Still at that point, not religiously, ever. Never watched Fox News religiously, except for at the 2000 election with the hanging Chad shit. I was glued to the TV during that whole thing. But Tucker Carlson came out and said, nothing she has is valid. We can't validate any of it. It's terrible. He basically just turned his back on election fraud entirely after that. That was the impact. That was the impact of Sidney Powell talking about Venezuelan election fraud, was everybody stopped talking about election fraud. Thanks, whistle boys.
Well, they tried to shut him up with a slap, right? The strategic lawsuits against public participation. They sued anybody that was talking about Dominion and these potential ties, and the ties do exist. We've acknowledged that there is connections between Dominion to Sequoia to Smartmatic. I stop there. I don't go as far as saying Venezuela is rigging the elections, which is the claim here, and that's the main thing I'm pushing back against here. Right. But rehashing this the way that they are right now, as a lot of stuff is getting exposed. The FBI is raiding Fulton County, has the evidence from Fulton County. You've got Maricopa County, where Tulsi Gabbard is making press conferences there and, having super secret meetings with the press and, press conferences and everything that's coming out right now. There's Yehuda Miller up in Michigan has over 1 million documents that they're still going through good stuff. And what happens? We get thrown right back into it was the Venezuelans narrative and gets pushed out again. And that was a huge distraction in 2020 and early 2021. That was a huge distraction. That took a lot of resources away from, verifiable election investigations on the ground in Georgia and other places like that. And everybody went into the Kraken, right? And all that stuff. And I think there is some validity to those claims. It just doesn't go to the extent that they're pushing now. They took it a level further now. And, the claim that Venezuela is rigging elections all over the globe and that we have to stop this. I think this book is a distraction. It is plain and simple a distraction.
It's not just a distraction. It's a rewrite. And it's a rewrite because what we've learned in this chapter is that they went to Pottinger. Pottinger's like, eat a dick. Then they went to Jeanine Pirro and she's like, I don't know, talk to Eric. And Eric was like, gave it to Sydney. They all vetted this stuff. And then they are now bringing it back around. This had the intended effect in 2020. And they're trying to they're trying to do double duty with this thing and have another intended effect.
That's the point that I want driven home. So what I have found out in all of the research, they have very limited playbooks. they sabotaged the 2020 aftermath with the Venezuelan narrative, and they are trying the exact same thing right now ahead instead of after, ahead of the real investigation into the 2020 election. They are using the same tactic.
Yeah, exactly the same.
I'm curious if we're going to see a name pop up, and I'm going to say this name here and we'll land it here, but I think it might have been referred to already, but Dr. Naveed Keshavarz Nia. Okay. Remember that name.
Why do we know that? We know that. Why do we know that name? That's not a new name. We know
he was with NSA. I can't remember. He did cybersecurity with NSA, but Sidney Powell cites him in a lot of her briefs from 2020, from that election. And he was one of the guys that went in and said that, there's backdoors into these systems and all that stuff. And he was, NSA cybersecurity. And I've got a feeling that we might hear about him in this book. I haven't read ahead, so I'm speculating on this. But when we were talking about the NSC and Pottinger earlier, that's the name that popped into my head. And I'm wondering maybe anyways, I'll land that there.
What's interesting about what you just said, though, is that's one of the biggest frustrations with this book. Had it been professionally written, there would be an index and we would know immediately. This is the poorest written book I have ever purchased. Well, technically, it's
Brian bought it for you, didn't he?
I did.
Who would make you do that?
Just said, thank God. But yeah, it is the worst book I've ever read.
It is a book that will be kindling for the next fire that we make when we're done with it. The next fire after we're done with this book, it's not even worth keeping, to be honest with you. It's that bad.
Yeah.
Ashe, you want to talk about GART 11 coming up?
Absolutely, you guys. We're going to Nashville. If there's an ad that I was supposed to pull up, I didn't. Wait, here it is. Virtual tickets for GART 11 in Nashville, Tennessee are now available. Grab them at the special early bird price between now and March 15th. After that, they go back up to $40. So this is for your virtual tickets to GART 11 in Nashville in April. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/events. Get the lowest price ever that you will ever get for the virtual ticket. That lowest price is happening right now. And on March 15th, it goes up. We're going to have a blast. Christy is going to take us line dancing, teach us choreography, probably going to do some karaoke. We're going to talk about all manner of great things. And we're going to be in Music City. So let's go.
Let me just say the best part of the last GART was karaoke.
Well, that's not very reassuring.
That was my favorite part, because then you get to see people for who they really are. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's the coolest part about GART is like we hang out with everybody the whole time. Like it's very engaging.
There is no backstage at GART.
Right. Exactly.
There's no green room. There's no backstage. We're all kicking it for the whole weekend. And it's a blast. There's arguments. There's fun. There's trolling and pranks and all sorts of stuff. It's great.
There's Ashe almost getting handcuffed.
Just the one time. And it was John Drake's fault. It wasn't my fault.
There's Alpha at 2 a.m. a little bit, two sheets to the wind. 2 sheets to the wind on his cell phone in a Twitter space with his AirPod in.
Yes. Also, Alpha stumbling up upon us with a random butt plug that someone gave, like a bachelorette party, right? There was like a bachelorette party, and he walks in. I'm talking to somebody. This is on camera somewhere, and I'm talking to somebody, and I see Alpha holding this thing, like pretending like he doesn't know what it is, and I have my full-on mom face on. I'm like, "Where did you get that? Did you make sure it's
down? It
you?
might be dirty.
Wash your hands."
Ew, yucky. No touchy the yuckies. All right, guys, we are out of here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned. Brad and Abby Live coming up. They're interviewing Sheriff Mack tonight, then followed by the State of the Union.
Oh, are you going to be on?
I think so. It depends. Again, if it's crowded, I'm out. But if it's not, I'll be there. So
you got to be the center of attention. You can't.
No, I just
spotlight. Is that what that is?
No, it's not that. It's just I don't, like talking over each other, and then I feel like I'm dominating, so I don't want to say anything, and it's just like, no, stop. So I'll probably we'll see, but take care, guys.
Bye, guys.
See you later.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.